In the hi-fi space, when it comes to brand power, I like to categorize them into lists. And just like with celebrities, in the A-list, we have brands that have evolved themselves beyond the audiophile market and have basically dabbled their toes into a little bit of the mainstream market. You know, the brands like Moondrop, Truth Ear, to a certain extent, maybe even KZ, these are the brands that could potentially be recognized by even some layman on the street. And then we have the B-list, which are brands that are famous within the audiophile circles, but virtually unrecognizable in the mainstream crowd. The brands like SimGod or 7Hertz or even Hangzhou, you know these brands, but the random lass on the street probably don't. And then we have the C-list, or as I would like to affectionately call the cult list. These are the brands with small but dedicated followings, and that's where the whole cult comes from. They literally have a cult following. On Hangout.audio, up to now, we have mainly sold the A and B listers from the hi-fi crowd. You know them, and within the audiophile community, we would consider them as safe picks. It's safe for me to sell them, and it's really safe for you to buy them. But today, I would like to talk about what may be Hangout.audio's first C-lister. May I introduce you to the Meyer Audio SLIIVO SL-41 Mark II. Meyer Audio is a brand that currently only has 2 models in its lineup. The first of which, and probably the more popular, would be the CKL VX D41, an absolutely stupid name. But at least they're consistent, because with the next model in your lineup, it's called the SLIIVO SL-41, and thereafter the SLIIVO SL-41 Mark II. The SLIIVO SL-41 Mark II, at this point I'm just going to call it the SLIIVO, is an IEM sporting a single DD and 4BA hybrid configuration. Now, officially, the MSRP of the SLIIVO is $350 US. As of the time of filming, no one's actually selling at that price. Instead, now the semi-official MSRP would be at $180 US. First, let's talk about the reasons why we're even promoting the SLIIVO, because as you know, if it's on this channel, it means that it is Clinical approved, and even right now, you can even buy the SLIIVO at Hangout.audio. So Crin, why promote a C-lister? What's so great about this random IEM that maybe 5 people in total have even talked about? Well, first of all, I'm gonna say the word meta. At this point, I'm just on a mad hunt on anything that just vaguely resembles the meta curve. Now, don't get me wrong, the SLIIVO is not bang on the current meta tuning. For that, you'll probably want to look at something like the Kiwi Ears KE4. It is what I'll consider flavored meta. It's not bang on the meta curve, but it deviates slightly, just enough to give it a little bit of pizzazz. So where exactly does the SLIIVO deviate? Well, if you look at the squiggly lines, you would see that on the pinna range, it peaks not at 3000 Hz like the rest of the meta IEMs, but rather around 2500 Hz. Quite honestly, this doesn't make too much of a meaningful difference, especially for listening to music, but it is enough for people to notice, that's for sure. The next deviation kind of covers the entire treble range. You have a peak around 5000 Hz, a general emphasis around 8000 Hz plus, as well as a peak around, let's say, 12 or 13,000 Hz. So what this does is that it provides a much brighter presentation compared to something like the Kiwi Ears KE4, which is probably its biggest competitor around the $200 price range. The bass, compared to something that is full-on meta like the KE4, also deviates slightly by virtue of having slightly less 200 Hz. What this means is that the SLIIVO would sound slightly cleaner than the KE4. It still has some of the poofy issues that the KE4 has, but I would say a little bit better. I would still describe the bass as poofy, don't get me wrong. It's still quite one note and there's not a lot of texture to it, but I would pick the SLIIVO over the KE4 just on this aspect. So just to round it all off, let me again just compare and contrast the SLIIVO with something like the KE4. The KE4 is an IEM that is bang on the meta tuning. It sounds good. It sounds natural, neutral, if you will, warm neutral with a little bit of a bass boost. The SLIIVO, on the other hand, pulls up the treble and sucks down the lower mids a little bit more, which in effect actually makes it sound a little bit more V-shaped than the KE4. In terms of detail, I would say that the SLIIVO has actually a little bit more apparent / perceived detail because of the boost in its upper registers, and the slight cut around the mid bass allows it to sound a little bit cleaner than the KE4 as well. Now, if you're asking me, I actually think I prefer the sound of the KE4, but like I said, this is just a different flavor of the Meta. There's a reason why we're carrying both products rather than one or the other, because we do feel that there is value in selling both the SLIIVO as well as the KE4. They're not supposed to really compete with each other per se, they're really just complements to each other. One would be better suited than the other for specific customers. And now let's just talk about the non-audio stuff, which quite honestly, there's nothing much that I can really cover. In terms of accessories, it's fairly standard. You get a carrying case with two different kinds of silicone tips as well as foam tips. The build of the IEM is also nothing really special. It's a resin build with a metal nozzle. Everything else is resin. There's really nothing much I can talk about here. The cable though, I would say really stands out for the SLIIVO. It is a silvery boy with a nice and thick wire, and quite honestly just feels premium. It's one of the best cables that I've seen for an IEM under $200. So let's talk about one of the reasons why you might not want to consider a SLIIVO, because the fit is not great. It's one of those IEMs where the shell is not contoured, and what that means is that there's no bumps or ridges that make it conform to any part of your ear shape. It is basically almost flat, which would have been a huge problem if not for the fact that the nozzle is actually longer than average. So when you do wear a SLIIVO, it wouldn't be too shallow of a fit, so it feels more secure in my ears at least. And with that, let's just run through everything again. The reason why you might want to get a SLIIVO is, first of all, its tuning, which is almost Meta, not quite, but a flavor of the Meta, which still sounds really good. They offer a slightly cleaner / brighter experience compared to something like, let's say, the KE4, which may or may not be to your preference. And now let's just talk about the reasons why maybe you shouldn't consider a SLIIVO. And first would be the fact that it doesn't exactly adhere to the Meta tuning. Maybe you're a graph sniffer, maybe you just really like the bang on Meta tuning, in which case the SLIIVO again deviates slightly to the point where you may not want to consider one at all. Next would be its overall technical performance. The overall detail retrieval is not great even within its price bracket. And the bass still comes off as a little bit poofy, textureless, one note, insert similar descriptor here. The treble may also come off as a bit sharp to some people. Again, there is a 5K peak as well as a 12K peak. Some people like this kind of flavor, some people just don't. And last of all would be the fit. It's not a small shell, there's not a lot of contouring, and it's a fairly basic shape, which may lend itself to a slightly worse fit on your ears. And there you have it, Meyer Audio and its new SLIIVO SL-41 Mark II C-list IEM, approved by me. And if you're in Singapore and don't want to take my word for it, well, you can try one out right now at the Hangout. We're located at 29B Mall Street, level 3 in Chinatown. Come on down, ask for the Meyer Audio SLIIVO SL-41 Mark II, the entire string of words. We do not accept anything else. Ask for it, grab a cup of coffee, and then try it out yourself. Form your own opinions. We don't care. We don't want to sell you anything. But if you're someone who's outside our great island nation and think that the SLIIVO might be to your taste, well, consider buying one at hangout.audio, our online retail store. We ship globally, and with the SLIIVO, you even get free shipping, with some exceptions. This is Critical for Hangout.audio, and remember kids, if it's not on the list, it doesn't exist. See you next week.